On Mark Tremont's 30th birthday, I was forced to drink strong liquor by his white moonlight in front of everyone. She's funnier when she's drunk, do you want to see it? Everyone is a little worried. Mr. Tremont, is this really okay? Mark said in a cold tone. It doesn't matter. She has dementia anyway. When I wake up tomorrow, I won't remember anything. He held my hand and I acted like a well-behaved puppet, because no matter how he treated me the next morning, all I would remember was how he loved me. 1. Mark invited many people to his 30th birthday party. There are old classmates but also many people I don't know. While eating, a group of people played Truth or Dare. Mr. Tremont, when are you and Arian Wynn going to get married? Arian is me. I have been with Mark for many years, from starting from scratch to becoming successful. Still not married yet. Let's talk about it later. There's no rush. Mark spoke casually, even reluctant to mention it. Because his white moonlight Tiffany was sitting opposite him. She came back from abroad just for Mark. I heard that Mark has arranged a position for her in the company. Tiffany stroked the red wine glass, seeming to be drunk. Ask Mr. Tremont a personal question. Is the person you like here? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone started to make a noise. Mark held my hand in front of her and said, The only person I love is Arian. Tiffany's expression was blank, she was a little stunned. Then she said bitterly, Okay. Only I knew that Mark was squeezing my hand so hard that it was about to break. He hoped that Tiffany would have a breakdown and kneel down in front of him, begging him to get back together. The next round it was my turn. Tiffany seemed unwilling to give up, and begged Mark with misty eyes. Mr. Tremont, why don't you just let her take the risk? I looked at Mark in disbelief. He knew that the big risk was to drink a glass of 56 proof vodka. But just one plea from Tiffany can make Mark give up everything. Tiffany became interested, pulled out a chair and came over with a glass of wine. She's funnier when she's drunk, do you want to see it? When I was in school, Tiffany tricked me into drinking, took off my clothes and took pictures. I have always remembered it over the years. I picked up my bag in panic and said, I don't want to play anymore. I want to go home. I don't know where Tiffany got the strength from, but she and a few others grabbed my arm together. Arian, you have to accept the loss. Mark, come on, I can't drink. Mark just sat at the table, not even bothering to open his eyes. If you obey her wishes, I will marry you. Tiffany pinched my jaw open and chugged a glass of liquor. It made me cough. The old classmates around him were a little worried. Mr. Tremont, is this really okay? Mark scoffed. It doesn't matter, she has dementia anyway. When I wake up tomorrow, I won't remember anything. I was choking and coughing. After I recovered, I slapped Mark hard. Everything was quiet. A red slap mark appeared on Mark's face. Tiffany exclaimed and was about to pounce. Mark pushed her away with a cold face. It's okay, I'm used to it. 2. In fact, I just found out I was sick this morning. It was Mark's birthday, and when I was happily making a birthday cake, he snatched the ingredients from my hands and threw them directly into the trash can. Stop it, I don't like it. He obviously liked it before. I asked cautiously, Mark, are you angry? He lowered his head and handed the tie to me. Arian, help me tie a tie. Before I could finish my sentence, I became incontinent. I made a mess in the living room. The dripping liquid beneath me made me stunned for a moment. What's wrong with me? Mark's originally peaceful expression suddenly tensed. In the end, he just squatted down and cleaned the floor without saying a word. He didn't say a word the whole time. I followed him at a loss, a little hesitant. Mark, I don't know what's wrong with me. He went to the bathroom and washed his hands many times before saying, You are sick. As he said this, I saw uncontrollable disgust on his face. I think if I hadn't gone through so much hardship with him for so many years, Mark would have wanted to break up with me. After Mark went to work, it took me a long time to accept the fact that I was sick. Feeling nervous, I ran to the company to find Mark at noon. But he saw Tiffany downstairs of his company. She looked like she had fallen, covered in dirt, with Mark's expensive coat draped over her shoulders. Looking into Mark's eyes, there was reluctance to leave. Mark pretended to be indifferent, but when Tiffany lowered her head, he stared at her in silence. Then what happened tonight happened. 3. It was already late when we got home from the party. Mark suddenly informed me. Tiffany will come to visit you in a few days. Be good and don't argue with her. In just one day, I took in too much and my emotions were on the verge of collapse. Why did you come to see me? To see when I will die. Arian, stop losing your temper. I know. I'm sick. No matter how you treat me, I will forget everything the next day. When I wake up, I will still love you as before, right? Mark, I'm the one who's suffering. Why can't I lose my temper? If she dares to come to my house, I will kill her. Mark touched the back of my neck, applying a little pressure, forcing me to look up and meet his gaze. With gentle eyes and a smile, he said, Arian, I can make a scene as much as you want, but this is between the two of us, so don't hurt anyone else. Okay. He feels sad, doesn't he? I smashed a lot of the furnishings on the antique display cabinet. The house was a mess. Mark was not angry. If it's not enough, I still have bedrooms. If it's worse, I can buy more. You can spend as much as you want. His cold violence drives me crazy. I sunk my teeth into Mark's flesh, drawing blood. Mark frowned, carried me into the bedroom, lowered his head and whispered in my ear, Little lunatic, be good tonight. You've broken up with me 18 times this month, and you don't even remember a single time. Arian, this is all your life will be like. 4. Mark was wrong. I have always been a determined person. When I was chasing him, I could take the subway across the city. When I decide to leave, I can stay up all night. I repeated what he had done to me 1,000 times, afraid that I would forget it when I woke up. At daybreak, Mark got up and answered a phone call. It's Tiffany calling. I knew that this was her invitation for Mark to stop by her house for breakfast on his way to work. Mark put on his clothes quietly and said, Wait for me. The door closed gently. I opened my eyes and silently took out the camera from the drawer. Write down exactly what happened yesterday, to remind myself that I must leave. During the process, I accidentally came across an old video. It turns out that this is not the first time I have discovered that Mark has cheated on me. On my birthday, Mark accompanied Tiffany to the obstetrics and gynecology department of the hospital. Folic acid was prescribed on the prescription, along with a prenatal checkup form. On our anniversary, I found a reservation record for a 5-star restaurant and 2 movie tickets for a private cinema in Mark's car. The movie was called Ambiguous. On the same day, I said to the camera with red eyes, I'm pregnant, but I don't want to tell Mark. The camera freezes on a B ultrasound report. But last night, in order to please Tiffany, Mark let her force me to drink. A sharp pain gradually spread from the tip of the heart and gradually turned into a piercing pain. Makes me shiver all over. I suddenly wanted to have it all clear with Mark, and didn't want to wait even a moment. So I ran to his company. The moment he pushed open the door of his office, Tiffany's suppressed crying came from inside the room. I regret this, Mark. Mark said. Arian is still not well. I know, but I don't want to wait any longer. The person I love is right in front of me, but I have to endure. Shut up. Mark's sudden cold voice scared me. Tiffany, don't say such things in front of me again. The secretary ran over to stop me and said, Miss Arian, Tremont always has guests. It's not convenient to go in. You should wait outside. Okay. I changed my mind and walked to the hall in a daze. I took out the expensive lipstick Mark gave me and started drawing on the bulletin board. A few minutes later, the secretary screamed, rushed over and hugged me. Miss Arian, what are you doing? I circled their 2 portraits on the huge bulletin board. 4 words were written next to it in bright red lipstick, cheap man and scumbag woman. Tiffany just walked out and saw this scene. Her face turned pale and she took out a tissue and wiped it frantically. Arian, what are you doing? I curled my lips and said, What do you think I'm going to do? You little bastard. I gritted my teeth and deliberately spoke the last 2 words slowly and heavily. Tiffany's face changed slightly, and she shouted at the people around her. What are you standing there for? Wipe it off. Everyone here obeys her orders and seems to have tacitly accepted her identity. When Tiffany looked back again, I noticed the familiar hairpin on her head. I left it in Mark's office last time. She had obviously taken a shower and her hair was still wet. I raised my hand to pull at the hairpin. Tiffany screamed as if she was frightened, turned around and pushed me hard. The huge force caused my lower back to hit the table, and the folder and printer were brought to the ground. I fell down in the mess, stunned. A few seconds later, a dull pain came from my lower abdomen. I was shaking with pain and only managed to stand up with the help of a kind person. In chaos, Tiffany frowned and leaned close to my ear. "Don't go crazy. I'm warning you, I'm not a mistress." She held my wrist tightly and said in a tough tone, "Ariane, apologize to me right now, in front of the entire company." When I was shaking with anger at her shameless remarks, I suddenly felt a warm current flowing between my legs. But Tiffany suddenly changed her attitude and started crying and begging me. "Ariane, please let me go, I beg you. I have nothing to do with Tremont, please stop torturing me." At this moment, a hand behind me tightly grabbed my wrist. A huge force pulled me over. Mark pushed me against the wall and asked through gritted teeth, "Ariane, did I ever tell you not to hurt others?" This was the first time Mark got angry with me. Tiffany's sobbing sounded like a kitten, feeling extremely aggrieved. He frowned and glanced at everyone present. "I have no immoral relationship with Miss Tiffany. If anyone spreads rumors again, I will pursue legal responsibility at all costs." You see, he is still anxious. Tick. A drop of blood fell at my feet. Mark's secretary screamed, "Mr. Tremont, Miss Ariane, she's bleeding." Mark lowered his head and saw the blood trail running down my leg. He looked at me in surprise. I gave an ugly smile and said, "Mark, Tiffany lost our child. Do you think she should die?" There were whispers all around. "Why is she?" "You couldn't hold it in?" Only then did I realize that it was not just blood. Blood mixed with an unknown liquid flowed down my legs and onto the ground. This is probably the most embarrassing moment in my life. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Tiffany looked flustered. "Just now I thought she was going to." Mark ignored her, took out his handkerchief and squatted down. He lowered his head and held my ankle. "Don't move, wait for me to clean it up." Soon, his neat and respectable suit was stained with a lot of water. The hand holding my ankle was also wet. "Mr. Tremont," Tiffany began. "Roll," Mark suddenly yelled, which scared me. "Get the hell out of here." Tiffany sobbed, turned and ran out. The crowd slowly dispersed. I stood there. "Mark, if you think I'm embarrassing you, just say so." He lowered his head, the veins on his forehead throbbing. In the end, he just said, "Ariane, let's go to the hospital." "What about Tiffany?" "Whatever you want to do." Mark spoke in a low voice, as if he was too tired to say another word to me. "I don't want to see her again." "Okay, I'll let her go." 5. After returning from the hospital, Mark and I fell into a cold war. The divorce agreement that I printed over and over again was thrown into the shredder by him with an expressionless face. He even forbade me to go out. In his words, "I don't even have a relative. I'm a person who can't take care of myself and I can't survive without him. He is so cold and indifferent. He hates me but pretends to be affectionate with me. Come home on time every day and have dinner with me." When I came back that day, I found that he was wearing a ring on his ring finger. It's the style I hate the most. But it is Tiffany's favorite. "Can you please take it off? It's really gross." Mark paused, put down the bowl, took off the ring without saying a word and put it in his pocket. But he refused to throw it away. But I couldn't eat anymore, so I put down the bowl and left the table. "Ariane, let's get married." Mark suddenly called me from behind. In the past, I would be very happy. But I know that this is not what he really said. Now is a critical period for Mark's company to go public. And the biggest fear is a scandal. The fact that he wants to marry me doesn't mean he has turned over a new leaf or has a change of heart. I turned around and taunted him. "Will I marry you, help you stabilize people's hearts, successfully go public, and then live happily ever after with Tiffany? Mark, you're dreaming." I didn't expect Mark's revenge on me would come so quickly. When I woke up at noon, I heard a noisy noise downstairs. I opened the door and walked out, and found that many strangers had come into the house. I don't know when Tiffany came. She was sitting on a chair in the dining room with her arms folded, wearing my slippers and directing people to move things. She acted like a hostess. "Throw away the bed, the bedding, and the clothes in the closet." The baby room, which had been closed since the child passed away, was now opened. Everything I carefully prepared was thrown away. "What are you doing?" Tiffany heard my voice, looked up and suddenly smiled. "Are you awake?" Mark asked me to have this baby room torn down and renovated. It would save you from feeling sad. Oh, by the way, this room is vacant and can be lived in. I can live here from now on. My brain was buzzing, I felt my heart beating faster, and the blood rushed to my head. Mark promised me solemnly that he would not let Tiffany appear in front of me. Now she is going to live at home. I trotted downstairs barefoot on the messy floor, and saw the crib that had been torn to pieces. There were all kinds of things piled up in there. Mark once accompanied me to the mall, and we picked out small clothes and shoes for the children together. But the amulet hanging above the bed, which I spent 3 months embroidering for my child, was gone. Where's the amulet? Tiffany shrugged. I just didn't like it and threw it away. Where did you throw it? Outside in the garden? Or in the swimming pool? Nothing serious, I can't even think of that. If you can't find the amulet, you and Mark will both die. I pushed her away fiercely, without even bothering to put on my shoes, and ran towards the garden without looking back. Tiffany stood at the window and made sarcastic remarks to me. Arian, look at you now. Are you still worthy of Mark? His company is about to go public. As the CEO of a listed company, he needs a decent and gentle wife who can go to various high-end places. But you are an idiot. What else can you do besides urinating in public? Please don't use your kindness in sharing his hardships to kidnap Mark. However much money you want, Mark and I will give it to you. Just let him go, okay? Look at yourself now, what qualifications do you have to ask him to like you forever? As dusk approached, I knelt in the overgrown bushes of the garden, groping around and ignoring Tiffany's provocations. The white pajamas were stained. The calves and feet were also scratched. When I couldn't find it in the bushes, I turned around and looked for it in the swimming pool. When I stood up, I was suddenly bumped into someone's arms. Mark hugged me tightly and said in a cold and clear voice, "Why did you get yourself so dirty?" I turned around and grabbed his clothes fiercely, asking harshly, "Mark, I just had a miscarriage, and you're so eager to tear down the nursery?" There were several muffled thunders in the sky, it was going to rain. The air is so stuffy that it makes people feel uneasy. Mark raised his hand and touched my face, then turned his face away, not daring to look me in the face. The child is gone, and keeping the room will only make you sad. Tiffany suddenly ran over and started crying. Mr. Tremont, she seems to hate me. The way she looks at me is scary. Mark didn't answer, but his eyes were fixed on her. I didn't want to see their affectionate eyes anymore, so I pushed Mark away and turned to walk towards the swimming pool. Arian, it's dangerous over there. Mark grabbed my wrist and tried to pull me back. An unknown anger suddenly ignited. I bit his wrist hard and heard Mark groan. He didn't move, nor did he let go. The smell of blood slowly seeped out. A rain finally broke through the clouds and began to fall. Ripples appeared on the water. Tiffany chased after me, pretending to be anxious, and held an umbrella for me. Listen to Mr. Tremont and go in, okay? If you catch a cold, you'll pee your pants. After saying this, she looked at me provocatively, feeling smug about having won Mark's trust. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and the water in the swimming pool behind me was overflowing. The dark pool water, without the illumination of the lights, looked like the bloody mouth of a wild beast. I suddenly grabbed Tiffany's hair and pushed her into the swimming pool. Arian! Mark yelled, squatted down and pulled me hard. It didn't move, because I put my entire weight on Tiffany. Tiffany was completely immersed in the swimming pool, her black hair floating, and she was struggling violently. After a short while, he could no longer struggle. I lost my strength and let her go. Tiffany lay by the swimming pool like a dying dog. Mark's face turned pale and he picked up Tiffany. He sat on the shore, let her lean on his arms, patted her back hard and said urgently, "Spit it out, just spit it out." His hands were shaking and his speech was incoherent. Tiffany started sobbing without even opening her eyes. "Don't let me see her. I don't want to." Mark's eyes were filled with anger. "Arian, go back." Then he patted Tiffany gently as if to comfort her. "I'll take you to the hospital. You can still talk, right?" I pounced on Tiffany again. "Arian." Mark stopped my arm and protected Tiffany. Next second, with a plop, I lost my balance and was pushed into the deep pool by Mark. The water rushed towards me from all directions, flooded my facial features. Before sinking to the bottom of the water, I saw Mark's cold eyes. He hit me because I hurt Tiffany. 6. The nurse told me that this was my 8th time in the hospital this year. After falling into the water, my body became very weak. I kept curling up in the quilt and had a fever and was shaking. It hurts every day when I get the fever-reducing injection. But I have no one to complain to. I don't know what Mark said to the doctors and nurses, but it seemed like everyone assumed that I was his wife. So disgusting. While the nurse was talking to me, Mark called in. She pressed the hands-free button for me and put it next to my ear. Ariane. Mark's voice was hoarse. Eat your meal or I'll watch you eat. I looked up and found him standing outside the glass window looking at me. Are you threatening me? I took the lunchbox and threw it into the trash can right in front of him and said, Mark, why don't you just die? His face was pale and sickly, and he didn't react when he heard me talking. Really? He smiled softly. Then I'll just have to watch you eat every day. After my condition stabilized, I was released from the intensive care unit and transferred to the VIP ward. From then on, he completely fell into Mark's control. He would come to see me every day and would say, Ariane, you have to get well. Watching the news on TV about his company's upcoming listing, I could roughly predict my own ending. It was after he helped stabilize public opinion and successfully went public that he was sent to a mental hospital. Eat an apple. Mark placed the bowl of cubes in front of me. While he was reaching out his hand, I lowered my head and bit his wrist. It's the same place as last time. The wound hadn't healed yet and I bit it again. Only after tasting the blood did he let go with satisfaction. Mark didn't even blink. Next time, bite the other side. If you keep biting the same spot, it will leave a scar. Yesterday, I tried to poke his wound with a toothpick and sprinkle salt on his wound with a seasoning packet. So today, the toothpicks and seasoning packets are gone. Mark, you should carve bitch on your face. Mark suddenly held me by the back and kissed me. He kissed me so fiercely and bit my lip. Seeing me staring at him like an enemy, he smiled. I don't expect you to love me. I just hope you can remember me. His touch made me feel sick. I slapped him. He was hit on the side and asked softly, Have you calmed down? I raised the corners of my lips. Not yet, unless you drown in the swimming pool. After saying that, I lowered the air conditioner temperature, snuggled into the quilt, and only looked at him with my eyes exposed. Mark, who was originally sick, had his lips even paler because of the cold wind. Wait a little longer. I'll leave after the nurse finishes hanging up the water. By the time it was over, it was already an hour later. Mark's face turned blue from the cold and his coughing became even worse. After that, he disappeared for several days. During this time, I received a call from Tiffany. Her voice was shaking with anger. Can you please stop torturing Mark? He is sick with a high fever. Only then did I realize that he had actually jumped into the swimming pool on that rainy night to look for the child's amulet. Does it have anything to do with me? If you could, his company's listing ceremony would not be asked of me. It's a pity that a mistress like you is really not worth it. Tiffany was so angry that she slammed the phone. I was hoping that Mark would die of illness, but that was not the case. Mark is still alive and I was discharged from the hospital half a month later. 7. In December, before Mark's company went public, he took me with him. The plane arrived in Hong Kong in the evening. On the busy street, he held my hand and walked through the streets. I don't know why he bought so many things for me. Hats, clothes, bags. The best-looking ones were worn by me, and the extra ones were held in his hands. Don't be sour-faced, smile. Mark seemed very happy. He pinched my cheek and put a plush hat on me. It's really beautiful. When we first started our business, I once accompanied Mark to Hong Kong. At that time, we didn't have much money. We couldn't afford to stay in a 4-digit hotel for a night, nor could we afford a 3-digit meal. Mark took me to the side of Victoria Harbor and looked at the entire cruise ship chartered by the rich. He was silent for a long time. Now he says to me, Ariane, I've chartered the entire cruise ship. Do you want to see the night view? I stood by the harbor with my hands in my pockets, wearing a woolen hat with a cute pink fox head, and said coldly, Whatever. Mark smiled. Okay, just consider it as accompanying me. His company is going public tomorrow, so he must be very proud of himself tonight. Victoria Harbor is grand and gorgeous after nightfall. I stood on the deck of the cruise ship, feeling the wind, and the music played by the band behind me echoed in the night sky. Mark handed me a cup of hot milk and said, "Come in and sit for a while. It's cold outside." I stood there without moving. "Arian, don't stand too far away. It's not safe." Mark pulled me over, tied up my wind-messy hair, and stuffed it into his warm woolen hat. I stared at the deep sea and suddenly asked him, "What would happen if I jumped from here? Will your company's listing ceremony be forced to be interrupted?" Mark paused, then bent down and hugged me. "Arian." His scent followed the wind, enveloping me completely. "If this is the case, I will die with you." I laughed. "What are you talking about? Tomorrow is your big day. I'm not jumping." Mark was also amused by me. "Then let's go in. There is your favorite piano performance inside." I let him hold my hand, and with many people watching, I walked under the spotlight in the center. Smooth piano music sounded. Mark is as elegant as ever. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Arian, happy 10th anniversary. Turns out we have been together for 10 years. Any surprises?" Mark took my hand and said, "Yes, but it will be tomorrow night." I said, "Mark, I have a surprise for you too." Mark's dark eyes fixed on me. "Really? Sometimes I think Mark is ridiculous. Since we were young, things and people have changed a lot. Why should we force ourselves to be a superficial couple who only look like a couple in name only?" Mark's cell phone rings. "You don't have to think about who it is." I smiled and said, "Go and answer it. Don't delay your work." Mark kissed my forehead, picked up the phone and walked away. The moment he turned around, the smile on my face suddenly disappeared and I turned and walked out of the cabin. A cold wind blew across the glamorous Victoria Harbor. I went to the guardrail, took off the high heels he gave me, and placed them neatly beside me. The coldness penetrated the soles of my feet. Not far away, Mark's voice was on the phone. "Don't worry, we'll get married when I get back." You see, he has been planning for his and Tiffany's future from the beginning to the end. I don't know when it started raining. I took off my hat, felt it, and threw it into the darkness. Look at it, hooked on the hull, floating with the rolling waves. I turned and walked to the window on the side of the cabin and wrapped myself in my down jacket. On the phone screen was the text message I sent to alert the police. "Mark kidnapped me. After tonight, he will be ruined." A few minutes later, Mark suddenly rushed onto the deck. "Excuse me, has anyone seen my wife?" He grabbed a passing crew member, his voice suddenly becoming panicked. A large group of people followed behind him, and they said in unfluent Mandarin, "We are coming out." I sat there motionless, huddled in a corner, watching them frantically looking for someone. Mark saw the shoes I took off on the deck and his face turned pale instantly. Someone pointed to the sea and said, "I saw her hat. It's down there." Mark suddenly started to take off his clothes like crazy, and was stopped by the people around him. "Mr. Mark, let's leave it to the professionals." Mark started to roar. "She's my wife. Who else would really save her except me? Let me go. I'm going to find her." Everyone hugged his waist and dragged him back. "Calm down. You have to stay calm. It's too dark. You won't be able to find it if you jump down." Mark's eyes were red and he almost begged. I can find it. I beg you to let me go." I watched Mark acting in front of everyone and laughed sarcastically. How come I never realized that Mark's acting is so good? "Mr. Mark, you must stay calm. We will call the police for you." Mark slumped to the ground, not saying a word. When the eldest brother saw that he had stopped struggling, he let go and took out his cell phone to call the police. The next second, Mark climbed over the railing. The splashing sound of people falling into the water cannot penetrate the heaviness of the night. I stood up blankly, the smile on my face disappearing. The wind blew across the empty deck. Mark is nowhere to be seen. 8. I was eventually found at the door to a utility room on the side of the ship. The salvage team searched for a whole night and found Mark soaking in the sea. He was rushed to a nearby hospital. "Ms. Arian, your husband is still in critical condition. I'm afraid we can only verify your accusation against him after he is out of danger. But don't worry, our colleagues will protect you throughout the process." At the police station, I watched the news report on the accident for a long time before I said, "He knew he would die if he jumped, so why did he jump?" The policewoman looked confused. "Maybe because you are his wife?" I didn't comment. Don't come to me for treatment. He has a lover named Tiffany. You can contact her. A day later, the policewoman came to see me. Ms. Ariane, we didn't find any contact information for Ms. Tiffany in Mr. Mark's phone. Could you provide it to me? I shook my head. I didn't. Mark protected her very well, and we didn't even have any way to contact each other. But as far as we know, Mr. Mark has no relatives except you. I replied irritably, how is that possible? Go to his company and ask his secretary. He will give you Tiffany's contact information. Ms. Ariane, you have Alzheimer's disease. Your attending physician told us that you have long believed that Mr. Mark has been having an affair with a woman named Tiffany, and you have attacked her more than once. Unfortunately, she is a fiction and does not exist at all. I listened to her words with a confused look on my face and suddenly laughed. Has Mark gone to such lengths to protect her? The policewoman frowned and said seriously, I'm not kidding you. Mr. Mark has no relatives. It's up to you to decide whether he needs to continue to be rescued. That's enough. I stood up a little emotional. If you called me here today for this, then I tell you I hope Mark dies. The policewoman sighed and handed me a cell phone. You can keep Mr. Mark's things for the time being. If you need anything later, you can contact me at any time. It was raining when we came out of the police station. The air was cold and damp. I wrapped a scarf around my neck and sat down on a bench on the street. I took out Mark's phone, turned on the screen, and the fingerprint unlocking button appeared, so I pressed my thumb on it. Unlocked successfully. I don't even remember when I left my fingerprints on his phone. There are not so many messy apps on Mark's phone screen, but there are hundreds of contacts in the address book. I entered Tiffany's name, but it didn't come up. I tried many different search methods, but to no avail. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't remember Tiffany's face. Until I came across a private photo album. A dialog box popped up on the interface, asking me to enter a password. I subconsciously entered my birthday. The moment the code was solved, my heart felt empty. What comes into view is one VCR after another. The blood began to rush up, hitting the eardrum again and again. I clicked on the first one. It was the fall of 2015. The video plays automatically. A joyful voice came out from the loudspeaker. Happy 3rd anniversary, Mark. Congratulations on my graduation and Mark on starting his own company. I recognized my own voice instantly. It turned out that I was the one who filmed this VCR. However, I no longer remember this part. In the candlelight, Mark, who looked much younger, raised his eyes and stared at the camera. A chuckle escaped from the camera. Why are you looking at me? Do you like the South or the North? What? I'm going to buy a house. Pick a place you like and we'll settle down there. I screamed in the video and jumped over and threw myself on Mark. Hug his neck and kiss him. In a dark and invisible corner, Mark's ears turned red quietly. The second video is from the spring of 2016. Mark was drunk. I was so excited that I put the camera in his face. Today we are going to interview Mr. Tremont. Who did you drink with so late? Mark closed his eyes, took my hand and pressed it against his chest. Mumbled something. Well, what did you say? I didn't hear clearly and moved closer with my camera. 200,000. I made 200,000. Call Ariane over here and keep an eye on him. Ending. I poked his lips and eyelashes with my hair with interest. Why should Ariane stare at him? What benefits do you give Ariane? Mark muttered. Hit her account. After saying that, the video camera flipped, falling to the ground facing the trash can. Mark's head was stuck in the trash can and the sound of vomiting could be clearly heard. Outside the camera, I frantically shouted, Hold on. I'll take you to the hospital. More than 100 videos bear witness to our past. From when Mark first founded the company to when it grew bigger and bigger. Our shooting background also changed from cheap rental houses to apartments and large villas. Among them, Tiffany's name has never been mentioned in any video. It was getting dark and neon lights were lighting up the streets. I felt a little cold, so I wrapped my scarf tightly around me and clicked on the next video. Year 2018. This time in the video, Mark and I are sitting in front of the camera together. I smiled brightly. Mark's face was gloomy. Judging from the way we were dressed, we were indeed much richer. I said to Mark with a smile, What are you doing? Smile. Mark lowered his eyes, looked at me seriously and touched my head. I looked back at the camera, and as I laughed, my eyes started to turn red. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's today. I used to think it was just a bad memory, but I never thought such a disease would happen to a young person like me. The doctor said that if the disease is well controlled, it will progress more slowly. I want to break up, but Mark won't let me. Mark hugged me and said stubbornly, "We will never separate. You should know that I will forget everything, including you." I also yell and scream and do a lot of unreasonable things. "Mark, you have a successful career, and you shouldn't have a wife like me for the rest of your life." Mark choked up. "If one day you forget everything, you won't be the one suffering. Ariane, I will never abandon you at any time. Let's get married today." I smiled and said, "I hid my household registration booklet. If one day I can cure my illness, I will tell you where it is and we can go get the certificate." "I can't wait." Mark begged with tears in his eyes. "Can we just do it today?" I kissed him on the lips. "Be good and listen to me. When my illness is no longer serious, I will marry you." In the following video, Mark suddenly took over the shooting. I became the protagonist in front of the camera. I tied an apron around my neck and sat in front of the bread oven, proudly showing off my cooking skills. "What flavor of cake do you like?" I asked. Mark secretly turned off the gas stove, which I forgot to turn off. "Lemon." I hummed a tune, "Then we'll make lemons." "Hey, what are the lyrics at the end of that song?" Mark hummed a tune and sang along with me. In the dim room, I curled up on the sofa and cried silently. On TV, a movie that had already been aired was playing. Mark smiled. "Why are you crying?" I held the tissue tightly and said, "It's so touching. If the cinema schedules this movie, we must go to the cinema to watch it once." "Good. Then remember it. It's the English version of Ambiguous, not the Korean version." "Good." The camera turned again, and the kitchen counter was a mess. I was wearing an apron, looking confused. "What flavor of cake do you like?" Mark secretly threw away the paint and said, "Sorry, I forgot to buy the ingredients today. How about we go out for dinner?" "But it's your birthday, don't you like cake?" He kissed me and said, "Eating cake will make you fat. You probably won't like a fat Mark." I thought about it, put on my clothes like him, and muttered as I walked out the door, "Actually, fat Mark is pretty cute too." Later, the video started to become shorter. Sometimes I would suddenly become incontinent while in front of the camera. Mark would put down the camera, run over and expertly clean it for me. "Mark, I'm sorry." "Don't say sorry, it's not your fault and you didn't cause me any trouble." Slowly, I started to become moody. The last second, I was still talking to Mark nicely. The next second, I would suddenly throw something at him. In one video, I was swearing at a woman who came in. She covered her head and screamed in panic, "Ariane, I'm Ella, your best friend. Please don't do this to me." I threw the cupcake at her face. "Mark, take your lover and get out." A few minutes later, my suppressed crying was heard in the video. "Mark, please, let's break up. I don't want to act like a madman and lose my temper with you." "It's okay. I don't mind, Ariane. I really don't mind. Next time, can you tell me that I am demented and sick? If I knew, I would definitely control myself." "Good." Later, the video turned into a monologue by Mark. "This is the third time Ariane has been hospitalized this year. She's starting to hate me. She would attack and hate all the women around me as if they were Tiffany. She has been a little irritable recently because she thinks she is pregnant. The doctor suggested that I send her to a nursing home. But I couldn't bear to do that. I told her many times that I loved her, but she always forgot." Mark's eyes were red. He lowered his head and calmed himself down. Just take a break for a while, stay with her, take it slow, she'll get better." In the next paragraph, many people appeared. I looked at it for a while before I realized that this was Mark's birthday party not long ago. "Mr. Tremont, when are you and Ariane getting married?" Mark looked at me a little disappointed. "Don't worry, let's talk about it later. Once she recovers, we may go abroad for the wedding." Later, they played Truth or Dare at the dinner table. The woman opposite held down the round table and stared at Mark. "Mr. Tremont, let me ask you a personal question. Is the person you like here?" The whole audience started to boo. "Mr. Tremont, think before you answer. Ella is my family. You will be in trouble if you offend Ariane's best friend." Mark held my hand and said, "The only person I love is Ariane. Ella's eyes were a little moist. Okay. I hope you can keep your promise. When it was my turn, Ella asked me softly, Arian, it's time. Shall we drink the Chinese medicine? I was sitting opposite him with my head down, looking dazed as if I heard nothing. Ella forced an ugly smile and changed the subject. Arian, don't you like drinking? How about we drink? I finally responded and looked up at her. Ella seemed to be encouraged. She let out a long sigh, picked up the Chinese medicine and walked over. Drinking is fun, Arian. Let's give it a try. I picked up my bag in panic and said, I don't want to play anymore. I want to go home. Everyone stared at me in confusion. Ella grabbed me, held my face and coaxed me softly. Open your mouth just for once, okay? I began to struggle violently and almost knocked over the bowl of medicine several times. Mark listened to my crying, pursed his lips, and the veins on the back of his hands were exposed. Arian, listen to her. Drink the medicine and we'll get married. Ella used her cleverness, coaxing and tricking her into making me drink the liquid. There were several bloody marks on the back of her hand where I had scratched her. Let's do this for today and think of another solution tomorrow. Mr. Tremont, is this really okay? Everyone asked worriedly. Mark smiled bitterly. It doesn't matter. She won't remember it when she wakes up tomorrow anyway. Raindrops hit the awning and I tilted my head back, staring at the sky stupidly. I couldn't even imagine what Tiffany looked like in my mind. I found Ella's name in my phone. Opening the chat history, it was still stuck in the long time ago. Schwang schwang. Mark's birthday is coming up, and I'm going to give him a surprise. What are you going to do? Invite his friends to come over. You are the warm-up master, so prepare some interesting questions. Ha ha, I know what you mean. You want to ask Mark in front of everyone whether he loves you or not, right? Don't worry, I'll do the work for you. At the end of 2022, I was alone on the streets of Hong Kong, crying uncontrollably. 9. Through a glass window, I saw Mark with tubes inserted all over his body. Have you paid the fee? Facing the doctor's question, I felt helpless. I'm sorry, I don't remember my bank card password. Go and try again. Your life is hanging by a thread, and we need you the most. If you keep defaulting on the payment, we won't be able to prescribe many of the medicines. Good. I didn't have much cash and no place to live, so I wandered around the payment window all day, entering the wrong password over and over again. The staff at the window said, Miss, could you please not disrupt the medical order? In the evening, I used my remaining change to buy 2 loaves of bread, standing at the door of the intensive care unit, repeating over and over again, give it to Mark. The doctors and nurses passing by were walking hurriedly. A nurse pulled me aside anxiously and said, Did you forget again? You need to pay the bill now, not to buy bread. Seeing my confused look, she sighed helplessly and left. I don't know who bumped into me, and the bread in my hand fell to the ground. I suddenly burst into tears. Like a useless person, the door in front of me opened. A nurse squatted in front of me and handed me a doll. Your husband has woken up, and he asked me to give this to you. He also told you not to be scared or cry, and someone will come to pick you up to the hotel later. I held the doll in my hand and only remembered one sentence. Mark is awake. I waited at the door of the intensive care unit for many days. He refused to leave no matter who told him to. When I feel sleepy, I just curl up on the small mat in the corridor and take a nap. When I woke up, I filled my stomach with the food the doctor gave me. I don't know how many days later Mark was pushed out. I stood by his bed holding the doll. Mark has lost a lot of weight. When he saw me, he sighed and said, What you fear will come true. They bullied you when I was away, right? I cried out. They won't let me buy you bread. Don't cry. Mark held my hand. You're making me sad. I accompanied Mark into the general ward. She held his hand tightly and refused to leave. When a stranger comes in, I get so scared that I shrink into a corner and tremble all over. Later, Mark stopped letting anyone in. Sometimes he would prop himself up and go to the door. Through Mark's loose hospital gown, I saw many scars. Pinching, biting, smashing. Some are still bruised and some have just healed. I followed him and gently placed my hand on his neck, feeling his stiffness and tension. Have I ever hit you before? Mark slowly relaxed and pulled his clothes in place. Nothing. You're very good and never caused me any trouble. I said listlessly. I tricked you into jumping off the cruise ship, which caused your company to fail to go public. That's not the case. You remembered it wrong. Get some sleep and you'll be fine. I snuggled up beside him and fell into a deep sleep. Had some messed up dreams. In my dream, I remembered Ella's appearance. She was in the office crying and arguing with Mark. I regret that I shouldn't have let Ariane stay with you. I want to take her abroad and find the best doctor. You think I haven't tried? I've tried. Why is it still not working? I'm going crazy. She treats me like a stranger every day. The person I love is right in front of me, but I have to endure it. I can't even say a word to Ariane. Mark, do you think you're the only one who loves her? Me too. Shut up. Mark's face turned cold. Ella, don't say such things in front of me again. Later, I painted like crazy in front of the bulletin board. Ella's face turned green as she rushed towards me. She blocked my face and yelled at the people around her. Get lost, what are you filming for? Be careful or I'll sue you. Ariane, this is Mark's company. Can we go home and talk about it? Not only did I not listen, I reached out and pushed her. You little bastard, go to hell. Ella grabbed my evil hand and was furious. Don't be mad. I'm not a mistress, Ariane, apologize to me now. I spit at her. You're dreaming. If you dare to appear in front of me again next time, I will kill you. Ella's face turned pale instantly. She was so angry that she started to cry. Ariane, please wake up. Stop torturing me. When Mark came down, I was pulling Ella's hair and fighting with her. She also had to protect me from falling. But I still fell. The skin was scraped off. Bleeding. Also incontinent. That day I said a lot of illogical and crazy things which hurt my relatives and friends. Mark and Ella had a big fight, and he wrapped me up in clothes and took me to the hospital. I woke up from my dream. The ward was quiet. Only Mark was talking on the phone with his back to me. My wife is a patient. If you hadn't spoken so casually that day, she wouldn't have pushed you into the water. I was just kidding. The woman's voice in the receiver sounded familiar. Mark's voice was cold. You called my wife a burden in front of her? If it weren't for the surveillance in the villa, I would have no idea what you did to her. The woman started screaming. I'm her sister, what's wrong with me saying something to her? You still act like a sister? Do you, the Wynn family, think that I will like you just because Ariane is sick? Don't dream. I deeply regret asking you to comfort her. What you did to my wife is unforgivable. Aren't you afraid that I will sue her and put her in a mental hospital? Mark sneered. You're alive and well, aren't you? I gave you the best treatment so you're alive and well, and you made up stories about Ariane instead of being a ghost. You should be thankful. I would never let Ariane die. If I did, it would be me. I stood barefoot on the ground and called him. Mark. Mark paused and hung up the phone silently. Looking back again, his expression was gentle. What's wrong? I finally understood why Mark repeatedly emphasized to me during those chaotic days not to hurt others. Was it her who spoke to me in the villa that day? Mark reached out to me and hugged me. Yes. I nearly drowned her. It's okay. She won't die. But I won't let her go for pushing you into the water. He sighed softly. The doctor said that demolishing the baby room can prevent further stimulation to you, so I asked your sister to come and help calm you down. I didn't expect that she had her own plans. After I fell ill, my family and friends all gave up on me. Only Mark hasn't given up. I leaned on Mark's shoulder and whispered, I miss home, can we go home? 10. After coming back from Hong Kong, I always like to sit alone in a corner, staring out the window in a daze. The company is in a mess now due to Mark's serious illness. He was very busy. We hired a caregiver at home to look after me when Mark is not around. I took out the movie tickets from Mark's pocket. They were 2 tickets for Ambiguous. It turned out that he wanted to go see it with me. Unfortunately, I was in a bad mood that day and got angry at Mark, so I didn't go. There is also the B ultrasound report, which shows that everything is normal. I was not pregnant, but because of my imagination, I kept making trouble for Mark, setting up a baby room, and going to the hospital to get folic acid. They all said that Mark had no relatives left. I am his only relative, but I caused him a lot of trouble. Ariane, what are you looking at? It's February now and it's snowing nonstop outside. A few days ago, the pine trees in front of the window were broken. Mark got off work and still smelled of snow. A little cool. I picked up the half-finished sweater in my hand and said, "I wonder if you can still wear it before winter is over." "Don't worry." Mark sat down next to me by the window. "You can always wear it next year." I leaned over and kissed him gently. I accidentally touched the ring on his ring finger. Mark shrank back and was about to take it off, but I stopped him. "I remember it." I unfolded his hand and looked at the ugly ring. "The design I drew." "Yes." Mark lowered his eyes and took out another diamond-encrusted one from his pocket. "They are a couple. But last time I called it disgusting." "It's okay. If you don't like it, I'll hide it and wear it next time if you like it." I held out my ring finger and said, "Put it on me. I like it very much." For the rest of the days, I seemed to have really returned to my old self. Mark and I would get together and look at old photos. "Take me with you to relive our past." He took the trouble to patch up my broken memories and piece together our past. During this time, I received a call from my sister, who cried and begged me, "Arian, please ask Mark to forgive me. I really know I was wrong. I don't know what Mark did to her to make her so frightened." This panic affected me and caused me to accidentally hurt Mark again. After I recovered from the shock, I blocked her. In the spring, Mark took me to see the cherry blossoms. The weather is warmer and I lose my temper less and less often. Mark always smiled and praised me. "Arian is amazing, you have really improved a lot." But I know that my temper has improved, because I can no longer remember too many things. I don't even remember why I was angry. On the morning of our anniversary, I got up and followed Mark. In just 10 minutes I asked him 5 times, "Who are you?" Mark could hardly maintain his expression and his smile was very ugly. "Arian, I'm your husband, Mark." I began to frequently forget where I was going. I often wake up and find myself in the police station. Mark came from an important meeting with an anxious look on his face and hugged me tightly. "It's good that you're okay, it's good that you're okay." Caregivers left one after another, because I only listened to Mark. They were afraid of me and couldn't keep an eye on me. The doctor suggested that Mark send me to a nursing home, a place with access control, surveillance, and many professionals who can keep an eye on me. Mark refused. "I would rather keep her with me than let her go to a place without me and live in fear." Later, he started taking me to the company. During the meeting, I sat next to him and played with building blocks. One day when I was in the bathroom, I heard them laughing at Mark. The CEO of such a large listed company brings his girlfriend to work every day like he is raising a mentally retarded person. It's so funny. Maybe it's just a show. A stable stock price is the only way to support us. Then I will pray that the boss and his wife will be together forever. Ha 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 ha. I saw she had urinary incontinence and Mr. Tremont squatted down to wipe it for her. How disgusting. I was in the bathroom and didn't come out until everyone had left. Looking at myself in the mirror, I saw that my shirt was flipped out of my skirt, and the zipper of my skirt was out of place. I wanted to fix it, but I couldn't do it. I knew it was time for me to leave. 11. Arian caught a cold a few days ago and became ill. I just don't want to go to the company with Mark. He temporarily called a nurse to look after her, and planned to go to the company to take care of some business and then rush back to be with her. When he was leaving in the morning, Arian ran over and kissed him. She also took away the ring on his ring finger. She said she wanted to send them for cleaning together. Mark promised Arian that when he came back, he would bring her a small cake sold by a cake shop in the suburbs. There was some trouble at the company during the day, and Mark was caught off guard. When I got home, the setting sun was reflecting dazzling light on the marble floor. In the kitchen, the nurse was humming a little tune while brushing egg liquid on the pastries. Mark asked, "Where's Arian?" "Sleeping upstairs." Mark walked up the stairs and found that the cross-stitch sachet hanging on the wall was gone. There is a leather ring missing from the antique display shelf. He frowned and pushed open the bedroom door hastily. The setting sun shines through the glass, showing off its might. In the empty room, the bedding was neatly spread on the bed, and on top of it lay a letter. Mark trembled and opened it. Arian's handwriting was crooked and the colors were different. It must have taken her a long time to write in fits and starts. Breakup letter to Mark. "Mark, I still feel that the decision we made in 2015 was the right one. I've asked the doctor, and he says I won't be able to stay awake for many days. Although I really want to go on with you, I'm afraid of our future. Just like you love me and can't bear to see me hurt and in pain, I love you just as much, so I hope your future will be bright. Let's end our journey together here. I found a nursing home where I can live out the rest of my life in peace. I promised you before that I would celebrate your birthday every year, but I can't do it now. I may not remember it in the future, so I wish you many happy birthdays in advance. In the future, you will find someone who loves you and spend the rest of your life with her. I'm sorry. It's cruel to unilaterally announce the breakup, but I don't have much time to be sober. If I soften my heart, I might end up hurting you. I don't want to take the risk. Mark, it's nice to meet you. Goodbye. The setting sun passed by the window and sank into the horizon. The light dimmed. The dolls in the room disappeared, and all traces of Arian's life were gone. Mark suddenly covered his face and burst into tears. Towards the end of spring, Arian left him for good. Left. 12. This coastal city does not have distinct 4 seasons. The wind from the ocean is always a little cool, but not bone-chilling. Today is Mid-Autumn Festival. Do you really have no relatives? Arian was sitting in front of the window folding paper, and the nurse behind her was helping me make the bed while complaining. I was supposed to be on vacation, but if it weren't for you, I would have gone back. She could hardly understand the dialect that the caregiver occasionally spoke. Even the origami competition was something I only found out about a few days ago by guessing. Hey, stop it. No one's participating in the competition. The caregiver took the paper frog from Arian's hand and threw it into the trash can. In the first few months after her arrival, the sanatorium was quite polite to this girl who had no relatives but was conscious. However, no one could stand her unpredictable temper. She is unsociable and stubborn. Every day I just stay in the house, folding paper frogs and throwing them everywhere. The caregiver quickly cleaned up the house and left. Today is Mid-Autumn Festival, and many patients' families have come and are all in the cafeteria. She is going to help. Arian was in the small room until 1 o'clock and was hungry. Instinct drove her out the door and into the kitchen, but on the way there, she got lost. When Mark drove a long way to the nursing home, he saw his Arian stumbling and chasing a scarf blown by the wind. The staff passing by looked indifferent. She couldn't catch up and fell down. A bunch of paper frogs poured out of the backpack. Mark stopped the car and walked quickly towards Arian. The security guard suddenly opened his eyes and asked, "Sir, may I ask who you are?" Mark's driver tossed a business card to the security guard and said, "My husband is this girl's relative. Please notify the dean as soon as possible." Mark walked over to Arian and helped her up from the ground. Arian's dusty appearance was like a tear in his heart. She looked at Mark blankly. "You are?" "I'm Mark." It's really ugly to see such a good-looking man forcing a smile. Arian felt a little sympathetic towards him and stuffed the entire bag into his arms. Mark opened it and found a bag full of paper frogs. "Is this a gift for me?" Arian nodded. Mark put the small school bag on his back, took out a handkerchief and patiently wiped her face. Arian suddenly started crying. Hungry. He knew that there were always people bullying Arian when he was not around. He was sad and couldn't hold back his tears. "Why are you crying?" Arian wiped Mark's tears, a little flustered. "I'm not hungry anymore, don't cry." Mark hugged her tightly, and the emotions that had been tense for a long time finally burst out. He really scared Arian. Crying and laughing, holding on and not letting go. Arian thought that this person was a little crazy. Through the door, Mark was very angry with the dean. Arian paid the money but did not receive the care she deserved. Just because she has no family. When Mark opened the door with a gloomy face, Arian was holding the doll and trying to escape. Mark grabbed her and sighed. "Don't run around." To Arian, it seemed as if she suddenly had a male nanny with a bad temper. Not only does she look good, but she also gets angry at others. But it's pretty good for me. She began to like him. "Where should I fold the little frog first?" Mark studied seriously. Arian taught carefully. "First you need to have a square, then like this." Mark learned quickly and folded very well. He finished a month's supply in just 3 days. Arian had nothing to do and said frustratedly, "I have nothing to teach you. Please go away." Mark insisted. "In return, I can take you out to play." Arian is a shy person and doesn't know how to reject people, especially those she likes a little. On a warm, sunny afternoon, Mark took Ariane home. She no longer remembers their past. Looking at the photo on the wall, he said, "Your girlfriend is so beautiful." Mark lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. "That's you." Ariane blushed and covered her mouth. "How can you be so casual?" Mark took her to every corner of the house. There were sticky notes all around filled with their stories. Ariane stood at the railing and read. As I read on, a feeling of sadness welled up in my heart. It seemed like she really had lost something. Mark never forced her to remember anything, and still took Ariane to the company every day. Ever since those gossiping employees were fired, no one dared to make up stories anymore. On the way home from get off work, Mark would still buy a small cake for Ariane, let her sit in the passenger seat, hum a little tune and say some fantastic things. Many people privately said that Mark would not see the light of day for the rest of his life, but they don't know that with Ariane around, every day is bright. Ariane's memory was suddenly dug up one evening. It was a Friday, and the wide road was jammed with traffic after get off work. The red brake lights flickered in the afterglow of the setting sun. Ariane heard a familiar song, the theme song from the movie, Ambiguous. The scene where Mark, holding his guitar and confessing his love to Ariane in the evening breeze suddenly came to my mind. She suddenly looked up and looked at the man in front of her who was no longer young. Memories came flooding back. It turned out that she had loved him for so many years. "Mark." Ariane called him softly. Mark thought she was just interested in a roadside stall again. He looked over and met Ariane's bright and moist eyes. Suddenly, the blood in his body froze. The lover he had been waiting for many years suddenly remembered him at this moment. Ariane smiled and shed tears. "Thank you, I woke up this day and found myself sitting next to you." Mark pulled over to the side of the road and hugged Ariane tightly. All the grievances she had suffered over the years turned into tears at this moment, soaking her collar. "You said that if you remembered everything, tell me where you hid the household registration book." Mark's voice was hoarse. "Let's get married, okay?" The heat of the evening had not yet dissipated when they kissed each other. After many seasons, Mark finally kept Ariane by his side.